The resolution, which was drafted by the United States and China, was passed 15-0 in a speedy vote hours after North Korea threatened for the first time to launch a preemptive nuclear strike against the United States and South Korea. The strength, breadth and severity of these sanctions will raise the cost to North Korea of its illicit nuclear program, the United States ambassador to the United Nations, Susan E. Rice, told reporters after the vote. Taken together, these sanctions will bite and bite hard. Li Biljun, the ambassador from China, whose support for the new sanctions angered the North Korean government, told reporters the resolution was aimed at the long-term goal of denuclearizing the Korean peninsula. This resolution is a very important step, he told reporters. Mr. Lee called passage of the resolution a reflection of the view and determination of the international community. The resolution, which was drafted 3 weeks after the February 12 underground test by North Korea, is the Security Council's fourth against the reclusive North Korean government. It contains new restrictions that will block financial transactions, limit North Korea's reliance on bulk transfers of cash, further empower other countries to inspect suspicious North Korean cargo, and expand a blacklist of items that the country is prohibited from importing. The sanctions also place new constraints on North Korean diplomats, raising their risk of expulsion from host countries. Asked if she thought the sanctions would break the pattern of North Korean defiance of earlier punishments imposed by the Security Council, Ms. Rice said, "The choice lies with the decision that the North Korean leadership makes." She dismissed the North's vows of a preemptive nuclear strike, saying North Korea will achieve nothing by continued threats and provocations. In recent days, with the resolution set to pass, North Korea characterized the sanctions as part of an act of war in its escalating invective against the United States and its allies. Earlier this week it declared the 1953 armistice that stopped the Korean War null and void and threatened to turn Washington and Seoul into a sea in flames with lighter and smaller nukes. The combative country is often warned that it has the right to launch preemptive military strikes against the United States, claiming that the Western power wants to start a war on the Korean peninsula. But on Thursday the North ratcheted up the hostile language by talking about preemptive nuclear strikes for the first time, citing the continuing joint American-South Korean military exercises as a proof that the United States and its allies were preparing for a nuclear war aimed to mount a preemptive strike on North Korea. Now that the U.S. is set to light the fuse for a nuclear war, the Revolutionary Armed Forces of the DPRK will exercise the right to a preemptive nuclear attack to destroy the strongholds of the aggressors and to defend the supreme interests of the country, a spokesman of the North Korean Foreign Ministry said in a Korean language statement carried by the North's official Korean Central News Agency. He used the acronym for his country's official name, Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The spokesman said that North Korea was no longer bound by the 1953 armistice ending the Korean War, and its military was free to take military actions for self-defense against any target any moment starting from Monday, when it declared the ceasefire was terminated. The resolution the United Nations adopted to impose more sanctions against the North will compel the DPRK to take at an earlier date more powerful second and third countermeasures as it had declared, the spokesman added, without elaborating. In the past, whenever the United Nations considered more sanctions, North Korea's typically strident rhetoric had grown harsher with threats of war. The threats were just that, and analysts said the message was meant as much for its home population, to whom they said the young leader Kim Jong-un sought to inspire a sense of crisis, as it was meant to unsettle the region to force Washington to engage it with concessions. Photos filed by news agencies from the North Korean capital, Pyongyang, and carried in South Korean media on Thursday showed buses covered with military camouflage and university students rushing out of their classroom building in military uniforms in a military exercise. Few analysts believed that North Korea would launch a military attack at the United States, a decision that would be suicidal for the regime. But officials in Seoul feared that North Korea might attempt an armed skirmish to test the military resolve of Park Geun-hye, South Korea's first female president, who took office less than 2 weeks ago. On Wednesday, in an uncharacteristically blunt response to North Korea's threat, the South Korean Army general called a news conference and warned that if provoked, South Korea would strike back at the top North Korean military leadership. The two Korea's frontline units exchanged artillery fire after North Korea launched a barrage against a South Korean border island in 2010. In the same year, 46 South Korean sailors were killed when their Navy corvette sank in an explosion the South blamed on a North Korean torpedo attack. With the United States standing behind it, South Korea has since vowed to strike back with a deadlier force if North Korea provokes again. Despite such warnings, however, South Korean officials feared that Mr. Kim, an inexperienced leader eager to build his credentials and gravitas as leader of his military-first country, might have been emboldened by his country's recent successful tests of a long-range rocket and nuclear device to believe that he could try an armed provocation with impunity. In North Korea, where pronouncements are carefully choreographed and timed, the threat on Tuesday to use lighter and smaller nukes was read on North Korean television by General Kim Yong-chol. General Kim, the head of the North's military intelligence, is one of the hardliners that South Korean officials suspected was deeply involved in the 2010 attacks